And if you have the link, the YouTube link or whatever, share it freely on socials. I completely forgot I should be doing that right now. 18 people are watching already. Twenty people. I guess I'm live. All right. I was ready. Really, I was. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, some of you, and good evening for the rest of you. Welcome. Welcome to what we're calling the Web Almanac Live. It's a live stream, and we're going to talk about the incredible HTTP Archives massive endeavor that started a few years ago. We're going to get into that, but we're going to talk about the Web Almanac and all the authors and the chapters that were involved in putting this incredible piece of research together. Now, you might ask yourself, what is the Web Almanac? Well, let's go through some quick details here. Now, I just wanted to post this so that everyone could see. The Web Almanac, what is it about? Well, it's a mission to combine the raw stats and trends of the HTTP archive with expertise of the web community. And we're going to talk about the web. This is a community project, and we're going to go down a bit of a rabbit hole of data, kind of stuff that I like. Ultimately, the Web Almanac is a comprehensive report on the state of the web, backed by real data and trusted web experts. Again, I just mentioned that right there. We are going to speak to a bunch of experts today. All of them were involved in putting this incredible Web Almanac together, and I'm kind of excited. So you'll have to pardon me because I haven't streamed in a while, and I feel like, I'm not on yet, but we're going to have a good time. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Henri, best known on the interwebs as Henri Helvetica. I've been a big fan of the Web Almanac ever since it started. And again, we're going to get into the history, but let's get down to business today. So the Web Almanac is made up of 21 chapters in 4 parts. And we're going to go through, I think 5 of the chapters today, spread across many of the parts. Once you go through the Web Almanac, you'll see part 1 is we talk about page content. Part 2 is going to be about user experience. And again, when you go through the Web Almanac, you'll see that yourself. Part 3, content publishing, which is obviously super important. And part 4, content distribution. These are things that you'll be able to see when you finger through the Web Almanac. Now, in today's stream, we're going to talk about 5 chapters in particular. One of them is going to be accessibility. Big fan of the accessibility chapter and accessibility in general. Super duper important. We'll meet the authors. We're also going to talk about markup. We'll be able to see that. Of course, we're going to talk about performance. Would you believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Web Almanac started, or the HTTP archive started as a project to sort of look at performance as well. So we'll be able to get into those details. We're going to talk about the infamous Jamstack. Yes, the Jamstack is still around. So shout out to Mike. We're going to meet him soon. And we're also going to talk about sustainability, something that's super duper important. Now, in today's agenda, which I want to get to right now, we're going to go through an introduction. Again, we're going to talk about the Web Almanac, its history, and what it is doing present day. We're going to get into the chapter discussions. As I mentioned, we're going to go through 5 chapters. We're going to have the authors with us, and they're going to talk roughly about like some of the data they found fascinating, some of the stuff that may have surprised them. Some of it was sort of like expected, and then all things in between. And then at the end, we're also going to get into an award ceremony, Best Chapter Award. Would you believe that? That's amazing. So I guess we're going to get going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in some of our esteemed guests to start with, and I'm going to go like this. Bingo. All right. Can I get a mic check, gentlemen?
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Amazing.
Hi.
All right. So I guess I'd have to remove this banner now so that I can see everyone. Give me one quick second because I couldn't see your names. We'll start. Caleb, introduce yourself and where you're from, what you do, and everything between.
Thanks, Henri. I'll make it quick. My name is Caleb Quern. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm with KPMG's cybersecurity practice, and I'm so happy to be with you all today.
Amazing. Mr. Viscomi, you're next.
Thanks, Henri. I'm Rick Viscomi. I'm based out of New York. I work at Google. I help lead the web performance DevRel team. And I started the Web Almanac.
Amazing. All right. We have a history right here, folks. I love it. Mr. Pollard.
Hello all, I'm Barry Pollard. I work with Rick at Google, and I helped out from the Web Almanac from pretty much the start. So I've been involved in most of the years and looked after the devs and set up a lot of stuff there.
Awesome, awesome. And lastly, but not leastly, Nurullah, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Henry. Hi, I'm Nurullah Demir, postdoctoral researcher in Germany. And together with Caleb, we have led this project this year.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you for leading this project and all the work you've done. Now, I just want to acknowledge, I guess we have almost 50 people watching already. Let us know what part of the world you're coming from. You know, drop a little emoji of your flag. And, you know, we're very curious because obviously, you know, at 1 o'clock, we want to sort of cover all the bases in terms of time zones. So, you know, if you're, I guess, the Pacific-ish, good morning again. Good afternoon for those in the East Coast, and good evening for those in the European time zone. And then it could be a little later for everyone else. That being said, let's get going. You know, the Web Almanac's been around for, I guess, about 5 years now. Has that been something like that? And as Rick alluded to, he was the one that got it started. Rick, did you want to give us a little bit of history of like what went into starting the Web Almanac?
Sure. So I guess I'll have to take us back to before 2019 when we published the first edition and what the state of web transparency actually looked like. HP Archive was tracking, I don't know, a few million websites at the time and collecting a ton of data about the state of the web. And, you know, the whole motto is tracking how the web is built. And with all of that data, you need somebody to actually query it. You need to know what you want to look up. You have to have an idea in your head about what stats will be interesting, but then also how to interpret the results. And we had a handful of metrics on the hparchive.org website, but honestly, it was very limited. It was not comprehensive about everything that you would want to know about the web. We had a discussion forum where people would share interesting queries and results that they came up with, and also a Slack channel where people could share ideas and the data that they found. But there were a couple of problems with that. One of them is the data is just a snapshot at a point in time. There's no guarantee that it's going to be updated at any regular cadence so that you can actually track how that is progressing over time. And we don't know who these people are necessarily. Are they an expert in their field? Did they make a mistake in their query? I like to assume everybody knows what they're doing, but there's a level of authority and trustworthiness that we want to have in the data that we present to the world. And I do believe that HP Archive is an authority on the state of the web. And what was missing, though, was some sort of like shared source of truth that covers all aspects about the state of the web that anybody in the whole industry might be curious to track. And so that's exactly what we did. We set out to create a publication that was updated annually. And I took I took inspiration from Stoyan Stefanov's performance calendar. So every day during the month of December, there would be a new guest post from somebody. And I really like the idea of distributing the content load amongst many domain experts And then at the end of the month, you have this like great culmination of all these different perspectives and ideas. And I thought about how I could apply that to HTTP archive data. And what I really wanted to do was get to recruit domain experts from each of these areas. So basically, for each of the chapters that we wanted to have in the Web Almanac, let's get somebody who knows what they're talking about. They've been working in this field for a while, and they know what stats need to be analyzed. And so the Web Almanac is comprised of not just the authors, but also the reviewers who are also domain experts, analysts who know what they're doing. They know about the shape of the data set and how to query it, and editors to ensure high content quality and a good level of polish across the different chapters. So in 2019, when we published this first report, it was about 400 pages worth of content, which I know because Barry actually literally printed a physical copy. He's going to get his, but I already have mine readily here. So this is what it looks like as like a printed copy of the 2019 Web Almanac. And when you compare that against the latest edition from 2022, this was 700 pages, and he's got the whole stack. And it just goes to show how much this thing has grown. It's really amazing. And thank you, Barry, for actually printing them. These make great novelty items. And I'm looking forward to the 2024 copy as well. Oh, I can't actually hear you, Henry. I don't know if everybody else can.
I'm terribly sorry. That was me muting myself. I actually asked Barry if he could bring copies to Perf Now, and he refused because he was like, "Yeah, I'm not going to check in my luggage just for these chapters." But Barry, these books, pardon me. But Barry, let us know how you kind of came aboard the project, because again, you've been there from the very start and have been very active in fact through the years.
Yeah, I wasn't there quite from the very start, but I heard about it whenever they were trying to get together for the first edition. I'd just written a book on HTTP2, and we were going to be having an HTTP2 chapter. So I volunteered to author that, and then got obsessed, as I often want to do. So I wrote my chapter. I shoved the analyst, I think it was Paul Cavano, was going to help out analyze it. And I was like, yeah, this sounds really interesting. I want to have a look at this. So shoved him out of the way and started analyzing myself, finished that chapter. And then there was an awful lot to do in that first year. Like we had a website to build. We had to figure out how we were going to put all this data and visualize it. We had translations, so we wanted to make it very open and available to as many people as possible. So how was that translation workflow going to work? And then, whenever I put a website together and put it up on the thing, we want it to be the best thing that we can do. So we're running lighthouse tests. I'm particularly involved in performance, as is Rick. So we were very keen to have a performant website. If we're sitting there talking about the state of the web, it's kind of important that we're giving a good example that it's on. So we spent an awful lot of time in that. Accessibility was very important to us, so we wanted to make the data, again, as accessible as possible. So we spent an awful lot of time just trying to build a very high quality website for, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a fairly simple website and it's just presenting content, but at the same time, there's an awful lot of content there. So it's very easy to make it slow or whatever. So we spent quite a bit of time trying to do that. So after I'd finished my chapter, I worked on some of that other stuff to try and bring the quality of the whole website to a point that we're all comfortable releasing it. And then got more and more involved in helping Rick organizing it. It's an awful lot to take on. And then actually to the point that kind of Rick and I were doing a lot of it, and then Rick took some time off to have children and asked, "Oh, Barry, do you want to take over my part of it?" And I said no. It was far too much for one person to take on. So that's why we had a little bit of a break in 2023, because Rick had the audacity to have a life out of it. Shame on him. And that's when we started reaching out to saying, right, okay, this is too much for the two of us to manage, and is there any better way that we can have of spreading the load a little bit more?
Awesome. And obviously at that point, the word got out, and in come swooping from the sky are two gentlemen, Caleb and Rula. And do you want to share how you became involved with the project?
You go first, Narula.
Yeah. So it was like end of December, I'm not sure, beginning of the January, I was discussing with Rick about the upcoming version edition. So I was asking, hey, Rick, when are we going to start? And then I noticed that Rick is also not pretty sure if we get a version edition for this year, because as Barry already taught, it's a significant effort that one needs for the organizing this project, and then we have discussed a lot. So how can we how can we bring a new structure for this project? And I was like, okay, let's do it. Okay, the project itself is already community driven, but let's also bring this community driven to the organizing level, so that this project and let this project organized by its contributors, and this year was the first experiment for that, and I think it worked awesome, and we have another great version of the Web Almanac. So and then I was like, of course, together with Caleb, we firstly built a team of an organizing committee, and of course we had also core maintainers from HTTP Archives core maintainers like Barry. He contributed amazing to the project, and then we have built a organizing committee for this project, and we have prepared some slides. Maybe you can also show each process that we have taken to organize this year's edition. But before that, Caleb, you have also some words on that.
I'll be brief, team. Yeah, it's so great to hear from everybody. So I got started only, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago. There was a comment earlier about the quality of the contributors across the years in this effort, and that's absolutely true. I feel like we have some of the world's leading experts on each of these topics in these chapters, and me. I have done the least along the way, and somehow I'm still involved after all these years. But I think my first contributions were probably around the privacy. Actually, it was security back then. And along the way, we added privacy later. But I'm just thrilled to be a part of it, because it's such an important work that informs how we think about something so important.
Absolutely. And, we'll probably get into that a little later as well, how just, we've had, people from, all corners of the world. And as you said, domain experts who have been able to sort of contribute to this. Now, Narula, you said you want to share some slides for this quick presentation you had. Just want to make sure I can see them whenever you're ready. Oh, there we go. And I see you. I'm going to add to stage, and the stage is yours.
Okay, great. So thank you, Henry, for bringing all of us together here in this event, and also organizing it. So we have some slides for you to give you some information on this year's edition. So like how it's gone, and what we've reached, and what's new, and what we also could do better for the next edition. So we have already introduced ourselves. So I'm Nurullah Demir, postdoctoral researcher in Germany, and
Yep.
yeah.
I'm Caleb Quinn with KPMG here in the United States. Great. Okay, team. If you could just click through, so we have all of our bullets on this one. We've alluded to this before, but I think the spirit and the theme since the very beginning is to know a little bit about more the nuts and bolts and the engineering, like with data, that really explains this important technological phenomenon that has changed the planet. There was a lot of, ideas and thoughts and hypotheses in prior years, and maybe some research here and there, but I don't think that had ever been a community-driven regular update with the similar methodology every year that was public. So that's what this is about. That's what the Web Almanac is. It is open sourced based on the data set collected by the HTTP archive, which runs on a rolling back basis. In the background, as we heard earlier, I would say, in fact, in a minute, we'll see some headshots of some contributors, but there's dozens of people who put time and energy into this from all over the planet, which that diversity means it's an even better product coming out of the other side. And finally, it's free. Anybody can and should go visit almanac.http.archive.org. You can see all of the year's content in their final state. Nurullah, did I miss anything?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, let's keep moving. I think this picture probably says it all here. Dozens of people put in a lot of hard work across the calendar year, going back months and months and months, of all types of shapes and sizes of contributors, not only in their backgrounds, but the roles they played. We heard earlier that we've got editors, we've got authors. What did I miss there, Nurullah?
Yeah, maybe at that point. So one of the contributors came to me and say, hey, it's really crazy. So it's really crazy that you don't pay anything to these guys, and they spent hours on this project. So, and it was like, hey, I can just believe it. So, and it's really the effort that you have made, and the effort of the contributors that made it possible that we have another version of the Web Almanac. So thank you very much. Yeah, and you have made it possible. Yeah. So this year we have analyzed 70 million websites, so it's nearly double last year's, and we have over 83 terabytes of data that we analyzed in this edition, which is also nearly double last year's previous editions. And this year we cover 21 chapters, which is less than the number of the chapters in the previous edition. In the previous edition, we had 26 chapters, and this year we had over 90 contributors. It's also less than the others, less than the last edition. So means we should put more effort for the next edition to spread the word for the call to contributions. Yeah.
A quick question for Rick and Barry, because over the years, as the number of chapters has gone up and now it's gone down, I remember us talking internally about what's the right number. Do we feel like we're probably finding that steady state of right amount of content over time here?
I think the right number is whatever we get, we will take whatever people are willing to contribute. So we've had chapters come and go over the years. The e-commerce chapter came back this year after a break for a couple of years, I think. So we don't always get people willing. I mean, it's an awful lot of time, as we've said a few times, to do that. So we don't always get enough people that we can staff a chapter, as we call it. We need an author, we need someone willing to do the analysis. We've had people who've said, oh, I can do that, it's easy. Idiots like myself in the first year who think they can take it all up on and quickly realize that's an awful lot of work, and then get discouraged, get depressed, and sometimes don't publish a chapter. And that's not what we want either. We want people to have a good experience here. So it's definitely not there. So I don't know. I think we've always been able to find something interesting for the chapters that have contributed. And I think that's where it's important. I think the second year, but the first year we started dropping chapters in 2000. I think we already had to drop a chapter or two. I personally was like, oh no, we can't have the third parties chapter where you couldn't staff, and I stepped up and did it. And I was like, oh, we've got to have that. That's such an important topic. And then over the years, I've suddenly got a bit more peace with that and comfortable with that. You know what? It's no harm to take a year or two break, and that might give people an opportunity then in a couple of years' time or 3 years' time to come back and say, okay, this hasn't been looked at for a few years' time. There's a lot of change happening. But yeah, I don't think there's a magic number. Rick, I don't know if you agree or have a different opinion.
I agree with all of that. I would also say that there's a bit about the web itself evolving and new topics coming to light. So for example, in 2019, we didn't have chapters about sustainability or Jamstack. But as these things become more important in the web industry and society, they become more important for us to cover as well, so that we can reflect the state of them on the web. So I definitely think, in addition to the human aspect of how much can we realistically publish in a year, new topics will also come and go. And I love the fact that we're flexible enough to just create a new chapter and explore that as best we can.
This sounds like you're also, the Web Almanac is certainly willing to take suggestions for new chapters. Is that correct? Absolutely. Oh, go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
I would just say the GitHub repository is a great place if anybody had not only ideas about new chapters entirely, but just general feedback. Just to create an issue under the HP Archive organization, there's a Web Almanac repo that anybody could. I'll paste it into the chat.
Awesome.
That would be the best place for any sort of feedback like that.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. And that's good to hear.
And I'll just say that, like, ultimately we're trying to use this to mine the HTTP archive data set. So there's certain things that maybe don't work there, because we're going to run crawls, we're going to check that data, and we're going to do that. So I think we've had people, I think it was a design chapter suggested 1 year, but we're like, okay, what does that mean? There was lots of enthusiasm, and then it ultimately didn't happen, because how can we get data for that? So I think certain subtopics and a lot of the ones that we cover in the chapters lend itself well to, okay, let's go in and drill into that data and see what we can have, and other ones possibly less well. But I'm sure there's lots smarter people than me that can think of ways around these things, so don't let that be a restriction. Let's talk about it on GitHub and decide what we do. So I don't want to put people off suggesting things.
Yeah. And I know Rick just mentioned this at the beginning, but ultimately the HP Archive, which is what the Web Almanac is based off, the raison d'être ultimately was how the web was built. And again, someone can make I'm sure a very credible argument as to why a design chapter should be there. And I'd love to see in here too. Following trends, I'm wondering if next year there'll be a 400-page chapter on AI. I don't know, but who knows? Because there's something going on there for sure. And how it could fit into the HP Archive is something that could be interesting to see. Do we have any more sort of like mentions in the slides that we want to make sure that we discuss, or should we sort of like wrap up this introduction?
Henry, we have some more slides.
Okay, cool. I wasn't too sure, so I know we had stopped on this slide, so I didn't know whether it was the end or not.
Okay, so just to give you an overview on how the Web Almanac works, because we have also here some new some folks that are not aware with the Web Almanac. So here I want to give an overview on that. So we firstly made a call for contributions via GitHub issue, and invited all the previous contributors to this project, and asked also the chapters that we want to see this year, and then we spread the word via different Slack organizations, GitHub issues, and we also invited our friends, experts to this project. And then like we had 6 weeks to complete the chapter content team, and after that, so 2 weeks after we completed the chapters, and the chapter teams came together and made their first meeting to outline the chapter. And typically they take the chapter from previous edition and then look and how they also discuss how they can extend this version and look also for if they can if the data they need is already available in the HTTP archives dataset. So if not, they have 1 month time, so 4 weeks to implement a custom metric. So with this metric, they can collect the metric that they are interested in, and it's then built in our crawler, and we have run our crawler on first June, and then the analyst of the chapter had more than 2 weeks to 2 months to run the analysis. So these are like SQL statements, and they had to run this statement within 2 months, and put also the results to the Google Sheets, which is also openly available. And then the authors had 4 weeks for the first draft of the chapters, and then the chapters for the first draft of the chapter is being reviewed and edited, and then the reviews are addressed, and then the chapter team is going to, so they create a PR and convert. So typically the chapter is written in Google Docs, and the content of the Google Docs should be converted to Markdown, and then we have launched this year's edition on November 11th. And today we are here for our live event, which we actually planned as a conference, but maybe we can get it worked for the next year's edition. So, and I would like to give a status on the. So I give an overview on the chapter status. We have today we have 16 chapters published, and so we have 5 still in progress, and the chapters that we excluded this year. So these are interoperability, mobile web capabilities, PWA, and compression. So we couldn't build a team for these chapters, and that's why we had to exclude them in this year's edition. Yeah, Caleb?
Yeah, along the way, we've already heard how this effort is a bit flexible over time and what gets talked about. This is a brand new chapter this year on cookies we're excited to talk about. If you could go ahead and Nurullah just click a few times there. There you go. As Nurullah mentioned, we were hoping to have an in-person event this year. Maybe next year, we'll see, but we're still excited to come to you over the video this year with this virtual event. Big announcement is that we're going to have a Best Chapter Award. That may be a hard decision given all of the high quality content among those 21 chapters. So that's new this year. And finally, I think the organization in the back of the house for the Web Almanac has, of course, changed over time as players maybe come up and come down, and how we go and how we organize ourselves does. But I think there's no doubt that this year has been the most community-driven effort than we've ever had. Maybe just based on volume of folks getting involved alone. Is that the way you're thinking about it, Nurullah?
Yeah. That's right. So maybe I can also give an overview on that. So why we need a community-driven organizing committee for the Web Almanac. So as Barry and Rick previously discussed, so the HTTP archive maintains greatly bright the project so far, but it's not sustainable because it requires a big effort, and I mean, just these guys cannot maintain this just for the years, so it's not just like sustainable. So that's why we so the project was led by the community, and so me and Caleb, we were project leads, and but we had also other members like Tobias. He was program committee chair and coordinated the chapters, and Barry reviewed all the chapters, and Christian made it possible and brought all the contributors on a platform so that they can work on the collaboration tools, and Substack have made the adjustments on the web page and maintain our web page for this new year's edition. And Miriam is still contacting the press and to spread the word and so to promote this year's edition. And Guinness will also present the best chapter today. And Henry just organizing this. And so as you can see, so we have built a community that worked, and which we also believe that can also help to make this project sustainable, and not just that two or three of the HTML maintainers should take the lead and make the same effort all the years. And so I'm always hearing from this project. So almost all the web folks are aware of the project, and there is no issues on finding contributors for this great project. And so I'm very hopeful to also make another version of it. And maybe Caleb have some words for the next year's edition.
Yeah, I can start to wrap us up, folks. So we still have plenty of exciting content that Henri is going to lead us through right after we wrap up here. So don't go anywhere. But we do want to start talking a little bit about next year, because if there's, I mean, you've heard a lot of information about the Web Almanac and how it's made, but among the themes is that it requires a lot of smart arms and legs and hands. So this is a bit of a preemptive call for contributors, because the 2025 Web Almanac, I know, will somehow be even better than the 2024 edition. So please reach out. You can ping any of the folks on the call here right now. We're pretty accessible. And of course, there's the GitHub space repo for you to jump into as well. There's no shortage of ways to get involved. We'll put it that way. It's easy. And while there could be a chapter next year on AI, as we suggested earlier, I don't think we will have any AI authors. Maybe some editing, I don't know. But in any case, we definitely know we need some help. So reach out and we will be glad to get you involved. What did I miss, team?
Yeah, so we are looking for the individuals, for the people that want to lead the next year's edition. So we will assist them for the next year's edition. So feel free to reach to us and make a proposal. So how you think that you can lead this project, and maybe you can give some information about on your affiliation or how you want to build an organizing committee team, and then we can discuss the details regarding to the next edition. But maybe at this point, Rick and Barry may also have some ideas or points to share.
Barry?
I'm too tired from this one to think about next year. So I'm going to pause and come back to this in a few months' time.
Well, I just want to say thank you to not only everybody who contributed and the entire organizing committee, but Norella and Caleb, thank you for taking over as the leads this year and helping to see it through. As you mentioned, I wasn't sure if I was able to do it, but I was so relieved when you said that you were willing to step up. So on behalf of everybody who reads the Web Almanac, thank you for seeing it through to the finish line.
Absolutely. Again, I think people may or may not realize, but the Almanac is quite the gorgeous knot to put together, and I think, with the 90 plus contributors, even then, I know there's a lot of, people have to meet deadlines and people have lives and whatnot, but the ability for everyone to sort of like come together and put together this amazing, this very thick book, by the way, I think is fantastic. And we know that the community benefits from it. Absolutely. The research, that has been put together that people are sharing at work. And, we'll probably have a couple of examples of that later on today, as I've seen some links being shared. That being said, gentlemen, I do want to thank you very much for giving us the insight on how the, HP archive is how the web was built. But the four people here give us an insight on how the almanac was built and put together. So merci, thank you very much for that. What we're going to do is now, as I mentioned, we're going to start with the introductions, which we just had right now. I just want to make sure I get my banners here. Bingo, here's the agenda. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to get into the chapter discussions. So, gentlemen, Caleb, Rick, Narula, Barry, I want to thank you again for joining us for the introduction. I'm unfortunately going to go through this painful moment of having to take you off the screen. So I want to wish you a salute and thank you very much again for joining us. So I'm going to do this slowly and surely, remove from stage. And Rick, I hate to do it. All right. So let me get back here. We've been sitting there talking about the almanac. I want to make sure that if you've not seen the link to the almanac, someone I'm sure will be able to share it in the Slack. But if you do want to go and give that a little QR code, a little scan. If you've not heard of the almanac, scan that right now and you'll be able to dip right into the depths of the 16 chapters that are now available. 5 are still in processing. They should be ready hopefully in the next few days. That being said, I also want to mention that this is the first stream of at least 2 that are going to take place around the almanac and the chapters and the data that's been shared. So sometime in January, we'll probably have the second one. I'll make the announcement hopefully in the next week or so, but roughly like, I don't know, mid to late January, we'll have the second stream of the Web Almanac Live, and we'll hear from other authors from this amazing, the amazing research that they've done for us. Now, that being said, let's get into some of the other authors here. So let me see who's left back here. Oh, Ines, I'm going to send the bat signal out. Ines, if you want to join us, please. So I'm going to bring in a bunch of folks, one after the other. No particular order. Just give me a second here. Bingo, bingo. Who else is missing here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, no, I think that's 5. 5, 5, 5. No, hold on. Oh, there we go. Bingo. And we're going to get things going. Can everyone hear me? Everyone's good? Can I get a little mic check from everyone?
Hello.
All right.
Hello.
Hey.
All right. All right. All right. Now we're talking.
Hello.
So now we like to call this, in Molière's fine language, the pièce de résistance. All right, we're going to get into great conversations, and I'm going to go through the room and have everyone introduce themselves one after the other, starting with you, Estela.
Okay, hello. My name is Estela. I'm based in sunny and kind of warm Barcelona in Spain, and I am a web performance specialist at Schneider Electric.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us, Estela. Laurent, t'es le prochain.
Merci. So I'm a web sustainability expert for Green Spectre in France.
Perfect. Thank you. And Mike, you are next. Oh, Ottawa Mike. Sorry.
Mike Gifford. I'm a open standards and practices lead at Civic Action. I do a lot of work on accessibility and sustainability, but also promoting open source.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Burak, you're next.
Hey, I'm Burak. I'm a front-end engineer based in Berlin.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Ines.
Hi everyone. My name is Ines. I'm a solution engineer at Storyblock. And since I don't get to do much of sustainability and performance, which are my passion in this role, then I do a lot of extracurriculars. So.
Awesome. And Mr. Mike, the Bay Area's finest, good morning.
Good morning. I'm Mike Newmigan. I love the fundamentals of the web, and I'm co-founder of CloudCannon, Git-based content management system.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. So we have 6 authors, 6 contributors here. We're going to go through 5 chapters. And I guess we'll go back and start with you, Estela, since you were first being introduced. Tell us about the chapter you covered and why you covered it. And, you can start to share some of the findings that you were able to write about.
Sure. So I am the author and analyst for the markup chapter. Why? Actually, I offered myself as an analyst, but no one was showing on to cover this chapter. So finally, I also covered the authoring of this chapter, basically because, this is like the basic, right? All the websites are built using HTML. If you don't have HTML, you won't have any kind of web page. So this is like the basic. So then it was like very interesting to go through all the different aspects that this chapter is covering. And yeah, it's been really interesting. I really encourage the audience to check this chapter and also all the other chapters, of course. But in this case, if I should highlight something, I've seen different things that still are, let's say, stable. For example, can you imagine which is the most used HTML element? Probably yes. Any idea, any suggestion? What do you think? It's a div. We use div everywhere, right? So this is still the case. Through the analyzed data during the last few years, we have divvities, still have divvities everywhere. But there are other things where we've seen like some kind of evolution. For example, something interesting that I was surprised is the increase in the use of custom elements. Now are more popular in recent years. So for example, in 2022, only 3.6% of the analyzed pages on mobile were using custom elements. And currently in 2024, it's like almost 8% of them. So it's like something that surprised me. So it's something interesting to see and then to see the evolution and so on. And something also interesting is, for example, the amount of languages that we used on the analyzed pages. So more than 5,000 different unique language attributes were found in our analysis. So it's like, it's actually a reflection, right, of reality. So it's really interesting to see these kind of things. I can hear you.
You're on mute.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be a responsible host here. You guys don't want to hear me breathing. But I was going to say with the language, it's really interesting because I know earlier today, I believe in the Slack, Barry shared this slide, some analytics here over the HTTP archive. It's still predominantly, HTTP archive, the Web Almanac, so it's a document that's still predominantly being read by, I think, English language territories. However, you're saying that you're seeing, through the data, it reflects that the web is really being sort of like, consumed worldwide.
But in this case, we were analyzing the lang attribute of So it's like you are setting that the content is in that language. But and that's also something that I cover in the chapter. Sometimes it may happen that you set that in English because maybe you are using a technology that by default is setting that English, but the content may not be actually in English. So maybe it's even more diverse than what data shows, because currently we are just checking the attribute setting the language in this case.
Amazing. Now, one thing I wanted to say, and for the viewers out there, all 170 of you, so thank you very much for spending your time with us, whether it be lunch, morning, evening, and whatnot. We are trying to have also kind of like a conversation, so you're going to see a little bit of back and forth between us and whatnot. So, and I'm going to remind the authors as well and speakers here, do not feel like you cannot contribute to the conversations. I do want to acknowledge that you have your mics muted, so thank you very much for that, in case you have some kids crying, some dogs barking, or I don't know. Amazon ringing at your doorbell. However, but we do want to make it a bit more of sort of like a conversational situation. So that's why you may not see some presentations from either of the authors here. So amazing. Now, if again someone was opening up the chapter, the markup chapter, if you want to sort of summarize it, like how would you describe the kind of content that you're pulling up just overall, and why the markup chapter was important to sort of author?
First of all, I think it's important to check to see how we are currently using HTML. So it's interesting to see if we are still using, for example, obsolete HTML elements, because maybe you are not aware that they are not actually obsolete. For example, fun fact, one of the most common obsolete elements that are used on the internet is used by Google in their Google search page. And it's an obsolete element, right? The center one. So these kind of things, I think it's very interesting to really see how the internet, people creating web pages are using the markup, see the trends, seeing these kind of things like, as I was mentioning also, we still use a lot div, but there are also custom elements getting increased. Also seeing that we use a lot, for example, data attributes, that we use that to customize something, right, when developing things. So it's really interesting to see what's going on, and also to check if we are still like, okay, following the trend or not. I think it's really interesting to see these kind of things. And it's a, let's say, wide chapter, because a lot of things are covered, because HTML has a lot of things, right? So it also covers, for example, the social markup usage, or it also covers something that is not really specifically for this chapter, but due to the fact that we don't have any compression chapter. For example, I also checked if the HTML files that we are sending to the browsers are compressed or not. Happily, yes, they are getting more and more compressed over the last few years. So I think it's really interesting to see these kind of things, to also realize if you are using this or not, and if you are following these trends or not.
Definitely. And at any point, do you cover the idea that some markup might be used improperly? Like, have you seen any of that kind of data? Because I remember years ago, what was it? I think, Rick, you had done and looked at, it was quite a while ago now, all the sort of like deprecated tags that are still being used.
Yes, the obsolete ones. Yeah, that's covered. That's what I was mentioning, that, for example, the center one, which is no longer really valid HTML, it's still used in many web pages, also the font one. So these kind of things are also checked. So you can see, okay, maybe I'm using something that I shouldn't be using anymore. So it's also interesting to be updated about all these things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. And again, folks, this is the kind of data that we sort of, pull down and sort of analyze, sometimes for fun, but, other days just to kind of realize that you may be, I don't say you're using outdated, markup, but, you can look at trends. You could understand why certain trends are picking up, and, things that you might be using that, it may have passed in terms of, a favored, I don't know, style, markup, whatever it might be. So, it's really interesting to read this kind of information and sort of, work with it as you get the info. So that being said, I posted a link, I believe, of the link to the markup chapter. So if you want to scan through it real quickly, you probably did. So I did that a few minutes ago. But, again, the Almanac, this is just one of the many chapters you'll be able to read and get informative info from. That being said, let's move on to another chapter that I thought was super interesting, sustainability. So for that, I'm going to bring in, or at least, have these two gentlemen come in and talk about it, Laurent and Barak, both involved in the sustainability chapter. What would you like to talk about when it comes to sustainability, why you put it together, why you're interested, both of you, in sustainability? Laurent, we got a little, during your intro, I think you mentioned something. And, let's talk about some of the findings that you came across.
Okay, great. So yes, this chapter, it was introduced back in 2022. because sustainability was a rising topic for the web, digital, because maybe just 5 or 6 years ago, we started to really realize the impacts of digital on the environment. And I think the Web Almanac is the right place to have a global overview of these impacts, of the best practices we can adopt for web development. But also, we had the chance to have a great team for this. So there was Burak, but also Ines and Mike Gifford on this team. And we needed to be a lot of brains for this because it's quite complex. And there are still lots of things that we couldn't do this year, but hopefully next year we can do them. But yes, it was great. The first 2022 sustainability chapter, the point was to raise awareness on the topic, to tell people this is the state of the art, this is where we are with sustainability and what we can do. And in this year, we also had the occasion to have a quick recap of what happened since 2022, new laws, new handbooks, frameworks, and things like this. And I saw that we are lots of people passionate about sustainability. With Mike, Gifford, and Ines, we're also working with the W3C on the Web Sustainability Guidelines. We had help from Fershad, also from the Green Web Foundation, to have data about green hosting. And there are lots and lots of things to say about that. So maybe, Burak, if you want to add something.
Yeah, this year I'm a fresh joiner, and I joined this year as author and data analyst. We did bring out a great chapter. If you ask me, it's a quite long one. It takes some time to read, but there are really good points that we covered, in my opinion. And I'm really happy about the team. Like team was always helping each other, and I'm glad that I joined to the team this year, actually.
I'm going to ask you a question. Laurent mentioned that there's some things that you wish you had been able to tackle this year and maybe you'll do next year. What were some of the items that you wanted to tackle, Burak?
So maybe maybe there will be an AI chapter, as it's mentioned before, but AI is a big point in sustainability. And if you ask me, maybe searching AI in sustainability perspective can bring lots of value to Almanac. We actually have a chat with Laurent in the earlier times of the day today, and we don't see, but AI has some really high costs to environment in compared to our traditional ways to search. So maybe this can be a nice addition that we can do.
Absolutely, and I'm looking for the link, but as you mentioned that there's an article that came out, I think yesterday or today or who knows what, how I think it was Microsoft that they're trying to, or they've found a way to sort of like recycle some of the water that you're using to, I guess, like cool off the serve farms or whatever they're doing out there and whatnot. But that absolutely has a major sustainability impact on that. Laurent, if you had to describe to someone who might be new to the idea of sustainability and why it's important, and they want to read the chapter, how would you sell it in, say, like, I don't know, like two or three sentences?
Okay. One of the end goals for sustainability is to improve user experience. For instance, to slow down the battery discharge. You're using mobile application or going on a website, and suddenly you see your battery discharge increasing and increasing just because of this. And there are lots of things that we can do about this. And we offer ways to do this and some really easy, quick wins for this in the chapter.
And yourself, Burak, like, if you people that, know you're a developer, they're like, hey, I just heard that you're a contributor to the sustainability chapter. How would you describe the importance of sustainability to some of your buds?
So in my perspective, since we are developers and I'm a front-end engineer, I kind of feel myself responsible because I'm earning money from my job, and it's my responsibility to bring something sustainable, because it's not like not taking flight or something like that. It's not my personal life, it's my job. And there are lots of low-hanging fruits, if you ask me. And but there is one easy one which you can start right away, which is the text compression. Like, over half of the websites aren't using any form of text compression, and this is basically like shipping a box full of air, and it's completely unnecessary waste, actually. Like, implementing compression could significantly reduce the data transfer and energy consumption. But like, only 24% of the websites are using gzip, and only 21% of the websites are using broadly. And if you ask me, this is an opportunity that we missed, and we should start working on it to have some easy sustainability gains.
Absolutely, and I know in the past, people have had, I'll say, reservations when we start to just discuss page weight and sustainability, and it is a very complicated equation when it comes to calculating sustainability. But there are some kind of low-hanging fruits, as you mentioned. One of the reasons why I remember I start to really pay a bit more attention. I do know that we consume a lot of video more than ever now, and I used to watch streams all the time, and sometimes I'd just walk out and not turn off my computer. And now I'm just like, oh, let me turn this stream off. I'm not here anymore. But that being said, it is an important moment, I think, in sort of history right now, as AI has come along, and we know that's actually been one of the challenges that they're slowly and eventually surely discussing, because it is consuming a lot of resources. And I just read that I think Sora, they're going to do like a free, you'll be able to use it for free. And I'm like, oh boy, like those server farms are going to, there's been all these comparisons about how they eat up as much energy as small countries, apparently. So this is going to be an important part in our sort of like history as a developer. And I love that you mentioned that as a front-end developer, it's like you feel some responsibility in making sure that everything is done correctly. The chapter's done. What is something that you'd like to tackle next year in terms of again, additional research, additional data that you may not have covered as much as you wanted this year, either of you?
Yes, I'd like us to have more, accurate assessment of environmental impacts, because as of today, we have a model that is great, that works, but misses a lot of things. And with that, we can also dig more precisely on animations, because it has a lot of impact on energy, CPU, but it's something that we usually don't see or don't take into account.
Mm-hmm. And yourself, Brock?
I totally agree. I think like the calculation on the carbon emission, it would be better to make it more accurate. I think we get a good calculation system right now, but maybe improving that, maybe including more parameters inside of it, maybe making it more accurate. I think it gets better and better every year, but yeah, maybe this can be something that we can work on.
Awesome. And that being said, folks, we're going to move on to our next chapter. But before we do, I also want to mention that I think I posted the link to the chapter, so you can go read it when you get a hot minute. A bit of a long chapter. So, pull up your little favorite mug of hot bevy. And but this is very important information, because sustainability is a growing challenge. And I'll just tell you quickly some data that I remember reading myself. Some corporations are starting to deal with companies that keep sustainability in mind. So, when you're doing your little sort of like CFP, you're trying to do business with some organizations, they are actually sort of picking orgs that do spend some time in sustainability, and again, they're being preferred in the selection process. So this is a very important chapter. Thank you both for your contributions. We're going to move on to Mr. Gifford. We're going to get into the accessibility chapter, and the stage is all yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you. First of all, just don't note that you're using Ali as the title for the sustainability chapter, which is what accessibility is usually shortened to. It's a numerum to going off and taking a word that has too many letters, because accessibility, and for that matter, sustainability, are very long. And so trying to squish them together with either A11Y or sustainability, I think it's S12Y. Anyways, that was mostly a leftover Twitter thing. But go ahead, Henry.
No, I agree, because I remember, I rather not make mistakes. So if someone gives me S12Y, I'll do it, because my typing is horrible.
But I can't count, so don't worry. Just count the letters first.
Absolutely. Okay, the stage is yours.
So the on accessibility, from the very beginning, accessibility has been one of the chapters in the almanac, and it is certainly something that's quite important. It generally uses Google Lighthouse to go off and to pull in this information. That's not all we used as part of this, but that was for me one of the main sort of central tool that we're using to go off and gather information. One of the things that I'm most happy about, though, is that I extended the test from what would have been done before to actually looking at a particular vector. I decided that it was worthwhile to go off and to investigate how governments are addressing accessibility, because that's not been something that we've done before, but it is for most modern governments. Accessibility is something that they are supposed to build towards some level, whether that's WCAG 2.0 or WCAG 2.1, or hopefully some are starting to implement WCAG 2.2. But these are standards that we should be able to evaluate our governments to, and also to try and provide a leaderboard whereby you can have an external party providing which is the HTTP archive, be able to provide an assessment that says how accessible are we as a government, and how do we compare our government to a neighbor. So that's that ability to provide some comparison from a particular snapshot in time. I think quite useful.
Awesome. So tell us about you've written the chapter, you're very passionate about accessibility. Apologies about the earlier link, by the way. I didn't realize I'd made a mistake. But you're passionate about accessibility. Was this informed by maybe a personal experience, or just, wanting to make sure that, you are, as a developer and, passionate person around accessibility, or has it been, like I said, a personal, sort of like passion there? Because some people sort of fall into it, through like, a possible injury, and they're like, hey, this discovery is made, and then they become, the sort of like representative.
I've had friends with disabilities most of my life, certainly all my life as an adult, and have had the opportunity, the pleasure of being schooled by people around disability rights and the importance of disability in society. And so sort of thinking about disability not as something for others, but as ultimately as something that is a human condition that we all need to come to terms with. And so ultimately it's a concern for people and planet, like, people around accessibility and sustainability is it's about maintaining our life as a species on this planet, is how I see that side, and why I'm interested in both, because they're both really critical to our future, and for that matter our present. But I think that in terms of I got involved in the Drupal community, and am a Drupal core accessibility maintainer, so also very interested in CMS comparisons and how that whole chapter went. But saw that there was an opportunity to learn from to make, if I could make Drupal more accessible, and it is one of the more accessible content management systems in this that we've found in the survey. But if I could do that, then I'd be able to solve or help millions of people get access, if not billions of people get access, because there's over 1 million Drupal websites around the world. So it was a nice way to try and scale up my efforts around accessibility. But because I was doing this with an open source project, I really had an opportunity to learn from others. So my work was critiqued, and I was able to go off and to learn from the best people in the web around web accessibility. So I could benefit from their experience and quickly scale up to be able to make as large a difference as I can. And that was also true with the accessibility chapter here, that I learned so much by writing this chapter, because there's certainly some things I was able to that I knew before, but for instance, I haven't done very much with video before, so I was able to have a very useful conversation with somebody who's familiar with creating captions and subtitles, and learning about that more about that process, which I haven't had a requirement to go off and learn historically.
Awesome. Now, you have, let's talk about the accessibility chapters. Let's talk about, some of the, maybe classic findings that, some of us probably would have expected in terms of, what is the web look like in terms of accessibility, but also let's sort of bring up potential surprises that, even someone like yourself, very much a accessibility dignitary, but you're like, hey, I did not know this, or this is a little shocking, and you may have slacked like a friend saying like, did you know this?
I think that one of the things that's come up recently was a comparison between the Web Almanac and the studies that we published versus the WebAIM also produces an annual scan. They take the top 1 million websites and scan them with a different tool. So it's a different process. And they went and discovered that I think 96.4% of websites contain accessibility errors that are being tracked. And it's interesting because we haven't. That's not a way that we've approached that problem with the Web Almanac. We've looked at using the Google Lighthouse scores and reporting the score numbers, and not looking for a total number of errors on a page, versus instead of just sort of looking at what is the average score. But there's different approaches and different understandings that you can get when you're looking at on errors on that level. Like I think that people are more likely to think positively about being close to 100% with the Google Lighthouse score for accessibility. Like that's seen as a good thing, whereas with the way that WebAIM presented it, I think it seems like accessibility is much further away because of how they've structured the numbers, and I think that there's elements that are definitely true for both, in terms of trying to understand this, but I think that the WebAIM provides a greater call for urgency of action, but we often forget that all of these automated tools only cover about a third of what is necessary for accessible compliance. Automated tools for any discipline only cover a certain amount, and there's lots of flaws with automated tools. I think about it like that there's the phrase that the map is not the terrain. The automated tools cover a certain portion of the terrain, but they really don't cover what the actual user's experience is. They give you a simulation of that for some types of users and some types of disabilities, but you really need to actually understand more as a person to actually get a full sense of if you're meeting the full requirements for for web content for the web content accessibility guidelines. So I think that was sort of one insight, is like how we're presenting the content and how that's structured. I would say that there's also elements of just how much is not easily knowable. Like how much we'd like to be able to go off and say, like, we can identify the number of alt text, but we can't at this stage be able to determine how many of the alt text actually have good values. We can have the length of the text, but are we actually able to provide useful alt text that is actually being able to be meaningful in connection to the content that's being presented to the user? Are the images properly being conveying what the author is intending them to convey to the user? And again, that's partly sort of looking at at the analytics side and what the limitations are, trying to understand those limitations. I was also like quite interested in trying to go off and say, when creating a leaderboard, how do we try and what are the opportunities with that? How do we try and help build some competition around that, and help get people who are excited or interested in accessibility? How do we get more conversations happening around this and build more comparisons? Because I think people, I think the accessibility chapter is got to be one of the longest chapters, and I'm not sure if there's an award for the longest chapter, but that's what I was probably aiming for, the longest chapter of the almanac. But it's there's got to be more in there to go off and to guide people and get people excited about the opportunities to get better and to improve the web over time. So those are just some things.
I mean, there's a million questions I could ask, especially around this longest chapter bit, because I read a bunch and I was like, oh my God, I think I've read the longest one now. But there are some long ones. I think performance was kind of long, so I'll have to go back and double check. However, I do want to sort of ask Estella a quick question. In your chapter, in the markup chapter, like, did you see anything that may have had some Estella, some what was I talking about? Accessibility, sort of like component to your markup, sort of like analysis? Did you see anything around like, some alt text missing or something of the sort? Because I feel like that would probably fall under that umbrella as well. Or am I wrong?
No, I didn't went that deep, because actually it's part of accessibility. But in this case, I think that, yeah, for sure we may have some overlaps here and there. But also, for example, it's also complicated to analyze, because, for example, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but an empty alt text is not an issue by default, because if it's not meaningful, the image, an empty alt text is okay. I don't know. It's complicated. I know your chapter is very complicated.
But it is interesting, like thinking about the future and where the web is going, and web components are such a big part of where the web is going. Certainly design systems looking to go off and embrace that, and that's not something that we've been able to incorporate within the chapters, or any of the chapters at this point. But it certainly has accessibility implications, performance implications, and certainly markup implications as well, because it's a whole different way of approaching the web.
Absolutely.
On that, the one that surprised me in the Markdown chapter is that the script tag has a higher usage than both image and p tags. That's crazy.
Wow. That's intense. I guess
that kind of tells you a bit about the state of the web and how people are building for it.
That's actually a fantastic point there. More script tags. That's what we need, apparently. But I'm sure we'll get into that at some point. We mentioned, Mike, you mentioned the 1 million site from WebAIM, their sort of annual deep dive into the web. And I know that was in part my introduction to accessibility a little bit. I kind of knew about it, but it definitely got me going. And, the one thing that every year it seems to sort of manifest itself is that the number one, or within the top 5, if not top 3, if images or accessibility issues with images are always at the top, be it alt text or I think it may have been around contrast. And I say images, I meant vision related.
Right.
Have you found in your data that's still the case?
There's still so many accessibility issues involved in both. Absolutely, like those are definitely still significant accessibility issues, and it's annoying in many ways too, because they've been around since WCAG 2.0. In fact, I think they were around in WCAG 1.0. So they've always been there in terms of web standards around accessibility. It's clearly a best practice. It benefits everyone, especially as we're walking around with our smart devices, right? Where we're outside, we're engaging in ways that have non-ideal lighting, and yet we're not thinking about building our websites so that they can be used in anything other than ideal circumstances. We know that for alt text, it's useful for not only looking at trying to go off and make sure that it works for screen readers, but so many people now are interacting with the web through other services, whether that's your Alexa device, or maybe you've got some application that allows you to go off and navigate the web through your phone. The ability to do text to speech is really quite powerful. It's amazing to go off and to see what like tools like Edge has an inclusive as a reader, a speech synthesizer that's built into their inclusive reader mode. That's really, they can read better than I can in terms of fluidity and tone, and multiple voices and accents are available as well. Like it's so impressive what they've accomplished with that, and this is just coming to everything. So if we're not thinking about voice-first interfaces, we're not thinking about the future. And being able to describe an image is kind of important if that image is important. If the image isn't important, then sure, it's just a decorative image. But so often authors include these images, and they are related and important and relevant to the content, and they add to the story of the content. And we're not thinking about how to go off and make that visual image tie into anything other than a web page that people see in the comfort of their homes who have full vision.
I'm sorry. No, it's absolutely, yeah, it's one of those things. Like, I've grown to really appreciate and understand what it means to have accessible content, and especially as my vision starts to just naturally blur now. It's pretty incredible. That being said, what is something, and just wrapping up, what's something that you'd like to potentially see next year that was not included in this year's chapter?
I'd love to see certainly web components, but beyond that, I think that there's an opportunity to look for accessibility statements as being part of the footer of the web page. And I'm still not entirely sure how to do that, but this is something that's required as part of the certainly the Web Accessibility Directive. It's a best practice around accessibility to have an accessibility statement in the footer of your web page. So this should be something that we should be able to pick out and be able to evaluate in order to go up and have better stats on how well this is being applied globally, and how many people are being proactive in talking about accessibility to their users.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. Once again, you want to go to the accessibility chapter and not the sustainability one. I'm sorry, I made the mistake earlier. I don't know what was going on, but go give it a good read. It's super duper interesting, as they all are. But again, these are very important details that you need to know as a developer, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll get into why people outside development also should be involved. But we'll get into that a little later. Now, let's get into another chapter here. Ines, I'm going to, I mean, you're on the stage already, but I definitely want to bring you along. We are going to talk about performance. Now, as I mentioned before, and I think Rick may have mentioned as well, I think performance was part of what drove the HP archive. We want to know, how the web was built, but we definitely start to use it to track performance. And of course, we have a performance chapter in the Almanac. There's been one each and every year, and you had the honor to pen it together. So what are some of the, what have you classically seen in that chapter that you expected to see, and it was business as usual?
So first and foremost, no pressure, no? It's been like one of the oldest ones and all of that. Luckily, I did not know that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, before, like when I actually volunteered. Yeah.
Awesome.
But, to be honest, actually, it was most of the usual suspects, no? So I cannot really, I give a bit of a thought to what surprised me. And I don't think actually anything surprised me that we found. So it was a lot of things that we found, through the data is actually something that is very, very valuable for any of us who are fighting to push web performance. to, back up our claims with data. So actually, since before I go any further as well, I just want to give a huge shout out to the whole team, because this was a huge team effort. So first and foremost, my co-author, Yevgenia, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name as well. And then, of course, Estella and Kevin, our amazing analysts. And thank you so much as well, Rick and Sia, for reviewing. Like, all of your insights have been super, super helpful and helped shape this chapter in what it is. So actually with that, I don't know, like, do you, Estella, have anything like from the data as well? Was anything that surprised you maybe?
Not especially.
Okay. Okay, good. Because I was just like, okay, did I miss something as well? But yeah, to be honest, like, I've been analyzing website for a few years, and yeah, that's.
I know you had mentioned in the chapter that you're definitely leading towards looking at a lot of the Core Web Vitals data, and again, if, as you said, it's kind of like business as usual. What are some of the classic data points that we know about, especially those that are in the performance end of town, but might not generally be understood or known?
Mm-hmm. So, well, kind of to start from the beginning as well, I'm a huge fan of Core Web Vitals in general, because I have a feeling that they did such a nice thing to web. Again, especially CLS. Like, CLS is my favorite, because 2 days ago I was trying to find a Christmas cookie recipe, and yeah, I had to improvise. Let's just go with that. But basically, like, just this. I'm a huge rage clicker, and even though my official story is always I ended up in web performance because I'm a engineer of telecommunications, and networks were always my passion. No, I'm a rage clicker. So I ended up in web performance because it was so frustrating seeing these things, like using these things, and I was like, okay, it has to be a better way. We have to have a way to fix that. So this is one of the things is okay, thank you so much for Core Web Vitals that have they had this huge impact of pushing a lot of development teams towards the better web, let's say it like this. And then especially from the perspective of making this awareness of slightly more business roles, because a lot of times pressure of web performance, I guess accessibility as well, and many of these topics end up on the back of developers.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really get to make all of these decisions. So maybe with that, one of the fun facts is actually, I'm not going to tell you which one it is, so go to the chapter and read it. But one of the big impacts, the third parties have a huge impact. And actually with some of the use of the data, which I'm going to comment in a few seconds as well, with some of the extra data that we had, we found which third parties actually made the most worst impact, so had this very bad impact on the loading. So this is something as well, in the end of the day, even though you ship a perfect website, then the pixels come in, and approvals and tools and cookies and so many things come in on top that of course make a mess out of it. So this is of course one of the things as well that we've seen here. So of course, other than that, very general, Core Web Vitals, we've looked into all of these data. We've looked into many data points, of course, going to these three topics specifically, like the interactivity, visual stability, and loading. So yeah, there is a lot of things about that. And then again, like a huge shout out that I have to do here as well is to the RumVision, who actually provided us with some extra data. So I'm already very happy that with Core Web Vitals, we do have Crux data, which give us the real user part. So we don't have just this emulated Lighthouse data. We actually get some, from the field, like from the wild data. And actually we kind of enhance that slightly in this chapter, getting some extra data from RumVision, which is a real user monitoring tool, and the company creating it. So they gave us some as well, especially with the long tasks and all of that. So the ones with the third parties actually comes from that data set. It is slightly different data set. Of course, it's smaller. And of course, it's, comes from the Rum tool, which means people who are using this Rum tool probably want to improve. So they're probably doing more things in general, but still it's a very, very valuable insights that we got actually using this slightly, extra data set.
Absolutely. And one thing, you mentioned a lot, but the one thing I'd love to see for next year is they had mentioned that there was no mobile chapter this year, and I thought that would have been really good to have because there's so much overlap. Like mobile can be performance, mobile could be sustainability to an extent. Mobile could absolutely be accessibility. Mobile could have like little sprinklings of Jamstack in it. So I think mobile chapter would have been really good to have, and that's again. Putting it out there, for anyone who might want to contribute and do a mobile chapter, you could look at last year's to get a feel for what it was like. But it would have been certainly extremely important because I think we are in a mobile world. That's not to be argued much, to tell you the truth. You'd mentioned some stuff about. I think yes, Rum Vision contributing some of their data set and some details that they have that I think are really interesting. And for those out there who may not know, Rum, real user monitoring, obviously it's the data that's out in the field. It's how the web is consumed on a day-to-day out there, because again, it may not be about having an M1 laptop with like a direct feed. If you could see the cabling on the side here, because I don't do Wi-Fi. I go right into the veins. But no, it's very important to make sure that we have that kind of information because that's how things are happening. And people may not know, like, Ness said she's a rage clicker. Rage clicking actually has a definition. We can get into, who has what, like Google has a particular definition. I think Sentry has a particular definition. I think Dynatrace may have their own definition. Catchpoint has their own definition as well, but rage clicking is something that's being tracked, and it's very important in its user experience sort of field. Now, the chapter is long, folks. Go out and read the performance chapter. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of data. What is some data that you don't think you had time or room to bring up this year that you may want to bring up next year?
To be honest, I don't know. I'm still processing the whole thing because it's been like a run to the finish line a bit situation. That was how is it deadline driven development, something towards deadline. So I think I definitely as we were coming towards the deadline and it was like, oh my God, like I want to check this and I want to check that. And to be honest, like now everything is blank. But yeah, I'm happy that we managed, of course, to deliver what it is. Also, fun fact, I read it through like the whole thing from top to bottom only once because like you said, like, okay, do this and then do that, then do that. So it was like very, very, chaotic at some point in time. But yeah, to be honest, in the end of the day, it turned out quite nicely. And I think the process as well, this is something I was not really quite 100% sure when I joined how it works. I think this is something as well for the next years. I was like, now I'm much more comfortable, like knowing how much sometimes take, how much, because in the end of the day, in the beginning, you've seen like the timelines. Yeah, no.
No, that absolutely. But definitely a chapter absolutely worth reading, folks. So go out and give it a good read. I threw that link in there. Let me just pop it open again right here. The performance chapter. And yeah, I mean, what we'll do right now, we will get into the Jamstack chapter, which I thought was awesome to see because I always thought it was a very interesting. It's not even a technology, but it's sort of like an idea that we kind of understood. And to have a chapter come about was, I think, great. So, Mike, tell us about what it was like writing that chapter. What did you discover? I remember Estella pinged me. She's like, man, I can't wait to hear this because I saw some wild stuff. So, Mike, the stage is yours.
Yeah, well, first, shout out to Estella. She has had her hand at many pies. She was our analyst for Jamstack, as well as doing the markup chapter, as well as doing performance. But that's a lot. Just taking on one is a lot. So yeah, big ups to Estella. And also shout outs to the other people that contributed to the Jamstack chapter. Tom Krupa, who was the reviewer, and David Large, who's the editor. So I imagine a lot of people probably wonder why there is a Jamstack chapter, because it's not a term that's commonly used anymore. But it's really something that touches all of these chapters, like particularly from a sustainability point of view. Like imagine when you think of the web, a lot of the web is very static in nature. You're delivering the same content over and over again, yet you have millions of servers around the world dynamically generating that output, which to me is just such a mismatch and underused technology. Well, overused in terms of like using dynamic versus static. So, and then you think of performance as well. Like if you're delivering what is essentially static content and your server's spending all this time getting data from a database, putting it together in a template and sending it to the user, like why does the server need to do that if it's essentially the same page every time? Pre-build it, and then you can send the content back much faster. And even better, you can spend a lot of time optimizing that content and making it really, really performant, doing accessibility checks to Mike's point, and kind of having this container of a website that you know is very fast, very accessible, and is going to require much fewer resources to serve. So that's why we thought the Jamstack chapter was important, because it really highlights all of those ideas and has a bit of a different perspective or different lens on those same ideas.
Absolutely. And, as you said, because there's so much going on, the idea of the Jamstack, and it's kind of like, okay, there's a bunch of little services, being used, and it's like, what is happening under the hood and what's the result, once you get it on a page. And it does sort of touch on a lot of chapters, or a lot of different chapters, and it could easily get a mention. So what is some really interesting info that you sort of kind of came across that, again, you might classically have seen, but others that kind of like were eyebrow raising?
Yeah, so I'll just give a bit of background of how we segmented the data. So we had 3 categories: static, hybrid, and dynamic. And then we put every website in the data set into those categories. And so we had a scoring system that Estella created this huge query that scored all the websites that are going to put it together. So we're looking for things, for markers that indicate that a website's static, like it was generated using Hugo. And we can be, if it's generating using Hugo, we can be 100% sure that website's static. But if it's generated using Next.js, Next.js has a lot of dynamic elements to it. So we said, okay, we're 30% sure, because it can also be purely static. And so we had all of these heuristics that had different scores, and then we used that to categorize. And then once we got the data, we looked at, okay, what are the top pre-generator frameworks? And we saw Hugo at the top, then Next.js and Astro. Astro is on an absolute tear. The past year is growing in popularity very rapidly. So I think that some of the most surprising things from this year is, one, we really zoomed in on Hugo, Astro, and Next.js, and just seeing the difference in JavaScript size between Astro, the average Astro site versus the average Next.js site. So Next.js was 3.5 times bigger in their JavaScript package than Astro, which, yeah, it really speaks to Astro's just the amount of tooling they have about bringing down that page weight. And then just seeing the growth in the overall industry, particularly the most popular websites, we're seeing pretty good growth across the most popular websites adoption of pre-generated and hybrid websites.
Mm-hmm. And I think in your chapter you mentioned, I think it might have been performance related, but I think pre-generated was almost always a better performing site, if I'm not mistaken, in your chapter.
Yeah. So we had 43%. 41% of pre-generated sites had good web core vitals. And we use Google's heuristics around that. Versus, I think it was 32% for dynamic. And actually the lowest was hybrid, which was also surprising, around 30%. And we can make some assumptions about why that is. A pre-generated site is probably made using a developer tool. So you've got a developer like handcrafting the code and probably cares a lot about the markdown, about the accessibility, about the performance, versus maybe a lot of dynamic sites are a WordPress template that a marketer's using and kind of putting their own content in and aren't really aware of those sort of issues. So I imagine that sort of difference is probably the biggest factor, but also you're just going to get a faster time to first byte with a static website because the server doesn't really need to do anything. It just needs to return a file rather than dynamically generating an entire page.
And speaking of dynamically generating, Estella, well, since you've had your hands in all these chapters, but I'm trying to remember whether or not I read this in your chapter or it may have been the performance chapter, but I think someone talks about, the page after a dynamic site is sort of like generating more and more content. Was it the markup? I can't remember. But, there was sort of like this sort of post, initial load look at content, because quite often enough, it may be different. And again, it might have been the accessibility one too. I'm just confused because I've been reading too much,
Yeah, not in the markup chapter. I'm not covering that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting for next year, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. And again, I know I read it somewhere. It may have been the Jamstack. I'm not sure, but I think it was the idea that sometimes you would have these pages that would be completely different after the initial load because the dynamic content was coming in afterwards, and suddenly it's like you had more tags and you had more weight potentially, and then some performance issues coming about the case. I don't know. It could have been the performance one. Like I said, I've just read so much right now that it's all just one big, how could I put it? Bouillabaisse almost. But with that being said, what are some of the frameworks that you sort of discovered were sort of like best regarded just generally in the Jamstack chapter, Mike?
Yeah, well, one of the unfortunate things is my personal favorite framework, 11T, doesn't have any marker or fingerprint to tell you that it's so that's basically not in the data set, but I imagine 11T would fare pretty well. But I would say this year it's really Astro is the standout across all categories in terms of growth and performance. They're doing really well at the moment.
Awesome. Shout out the Astro team. They just launched 5.0, I believe. Cool. What's something that you'd like to see next year potentially, if you had the time to put it together again and you'd want to add?
I think diving more into the frameworks and doing analysis there and touching on everything that everyone's been talking here, like which Mike kind of did this, but what framework's most accessible, which SSG framework is most accessible, which SSG framework's most performant or sustainable, which uses the best semantic markup. I think that would be really interesting.
Awesome. So what you're saying is you're basically starting to put it together after the new year. Is that it?
Maybe.
No, that's what we love to hear, man.
Get started.
Excellent. All right. Well, we have one writer down, a few more to go. Mike, thank you very much for that. Thank you for sharing, some of the details of the Jamstack chapter. Once again, I do believe I threw it in the comments. Yeah, here it is. Go give it a good read. Again, fascinating information there. Now, that being said, those comments are there. Perfect. We're going to close out this sort of like intimate and interactive talk with the chapter authors here. And one by one, I'm going to let you guys sort of let us know where to find you, where we can find out more information about your work, etc., and where you want to be seen on socials, starting with Estela.
Sure. You can find me basically on Mastodon or Blue Sky. My handle is Guaca everywhere, like guacamole. Yes, Guaca.
Okay. All
And
right.
then on LinkedIn, just my name, Stella Franco.
Awesome. And by all means, please just share it on in the chat so people could just sort of click and find you. Estella, thank you very much. I'm unfortunately going to give you the big boot as I get ready to bring on someone else. So I'm removing you from the stage. Mike, Mr. Gifford, you're next. Where can we find you? And some of your incredible writing.
Mostly I'm on LinkedIn, but I can be found almost everywhere at M Gifford. I'm leaving Twitter, so please don't follow me there. But Blue Sky, Mastodon, I'm happy to engage there. So that's basically it.
Awesome. And again, you could punch in your socials of choice in a comment. And thank you very much for your time. And I'm going to move you as well. Who's next? Barack. Whoa, what's going on here? Well, I'm gonna have to sort of file. I'm gonna have to file a bug. I don't know.
It's fine. I think LinkedIn is the best place to find me right now because I might be also switching my Twitter to alternatives. But yeah, if you want to make sure that you want to reach out to me, LinkedIn is the best place. Yeah.
Awesome. Feel free to put in your LinkedIn profile in the comments if you want people to find you. Thank you very much for your time. And Ines, where can we find you if you're not sort of, busy being an amazing mom?
Ines +1. Yeah. Well, basically, these days, I'm sorry if I don't respond, but yeah, I'm slightly less responsive than a few years ago. But yeah, I guess the easiest way would be inesakrab.com. That one has all the links as well to all, or in the end of the day, at the end of the chapter, the web performance chapter has our small bio with some links as well. So but yeah, LinkedIn, I think that would be my best bet.
Awesome. All right, perfect. Well, make sure to throw that in if you can. And thank you very much again for your time. And Monsieur Mike.
Yeah, you can find me.
Where can we find you? Go ahead.
You can find me on Blue Sky. Just search Mike Newmigan or LinkedIn. And Henri, I just wanted to say thank you for hosting. This is really great getting together.
Hey, man, thank you for taking your time. I know it's you had to kind of like break out in the morning and just get ready. But I do appreciate everyone's time for joining us today. And I think it's really important for people to get to know the Almanac and actually hear from the authors. So that's pretty awesome. But no, thank you very much for the shouts. And yeah, if you can, put in your information in the chat, and so that people can follow you and your passionate discussion around the Jamstack and everything around there. So thank you again. And so before I move on to the last part, which is going to be the sort of like the chapter award, I just kind of want to share a couple details that came up today. Hold up. If I go present and I go share screen, and I'm going to go yes, and I'm going to go here and share. So obviously, we've been talking about the Almanac. 16 of the 21 chapters are now ready to read. You could just sort of go to start exploring down here, and you'll see all the chapters that are there, and many of the ones that we covered today. So definitely give it a look. And if you have not, let me see, let me go back here. I'll just drop that link in the chat again. Right there. Bingo. That's the Almanac. And also, well, I'll show it afterwards. Something that came up earlier today, I believe, and I think it was. How do I do this? Why is it not moving? Give me a quick second here. Let me go back and share the screen. Some information that Barry was discussing. Where is it? Oh, some of the analytics. I'll drop the link in the chat, but he shared some of the analytics for the Almanac so far, and you can look at it here. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. What was how the Almanac was being consumed so far. So that being said, you can go take a look at that. And the other thing that I want to mention is, I think, oh yeah, let's look at something else here, and I'll share the screen one more time. Where is it? Oh no, why is it not showing up? It is showing up. So Wix, I guess, on their blog, they mentioned the Almanac, actually, and they talked about how Wix, the platform, did well on one of the most, as the most accessible website platform and the best SEO performer. But I just want to highlight that because this is getting back to something that I think I was mentioning earlier. Yes, the Almanac, super important for developers to read. I think it gives you an idea of how the web is being built, the good practices, some that are maybe not de rigueur or favorable, but it's not only for developers. I think it's important for people to realize that there's information out there for an array of staff at your company. It could be on the marketing side, could be, the SEO team, as mentioned here. It could be, I don't know, a number of people will have interest in some of this information. So, at your company Slack or Teams or whatever it is that you may be using, freely share this. I think there's a chapter in there for someone to read. Again, the engineers, absolutely. The accessibility team, absolutely. Could be your design team, who might take a look at the accessibility chapter. Your design team might want to take a closer look, potentially at performance even. And, maybe there's going to be a design chapter next year. Who knows? They may want to pitch the HTTP archive folks. Something else I want to mention, maybe the AI team that you have or will have eventually may want to take a look at that. So that's something I really want to mention. I think Mike Gifford also shared that he was interviewed at some point. I think it was today, or the published interview came out today. So, there are people who are very much interested in the Almanac, the data that came out, and, these are opportunities to kind of talk about it. Now, stop sharing. What we're going to do is get into the last bits right here. We're going to talk about the chapters specifically, pardon me, we're going to give a best chapter award. So I want to make sure that our friend is here. Yes, he is. Let me just do this. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to bring Gunesh to the stage. Gunesh, thank you for taking some time through the introduction, through the conversation with the authors, and coming back and talking to us about the best chapters. First of all, introduce yourself, let them know who you are, why you're here, et cetera, by all means.
Sure. Thank you, Arnie. So my name is Gunesh Ajar. I'm an assistant professor at the Radboud University. So I'm joining you from the Netherlands. So it's like almost 9 p.m. here, but I'm enjoying the stream, and thanks so much for the lively hosting. So it's really brings energy. Mute. We can't hear you. Henry.
Oh, sorry. Again, I was being too polite. I had my thing on mute. No, but I do want to thank you for spending the time. And I know it's in Europe. It's a little late right now, so I don't want to keep you for too much longer. But I do appreciate your dedication to sticking around. So I do know you want to share some this deck here. So I'm going to bring that on the stage, and I'm going to let you do your thing. By all means, Gunesh.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Ari. So I've been asked by the general chairs to basically, like serve as the award committee. So go through the chapters and then like pick a winner. But so there are some details I want to share in terms of for transparency. So the project leads Nurullah, Caleb, and Barry recommended 6 chapters to me for evaluation. They took into account what kind of novel analysis this chapter did, team collaboration, adherence to deadlines, and feedback they received. And then I picked the winning chapter considering the following. So I asked this question, like, how does the text and the analysis compare to the past year's chapter?
Mm-hmm.
Any meaningful new analysis, figures and sections, any response to changing standards and guidelines? You know, the web changes every day, browsers change every day. So really, so if people like looking from outside thinking that this is like automated tasks of running the queries and again, it definitely not is. So if you just go through the queries, how they update since the 2022, like last revision, there's an immense amount of updates the authors or the team members need to do. And then I also check whether the introduction and the conclusion puts the contribution into some perspective in an accessible way. Like you said, right? So we don't want this almanac to be just addressing the technical, like a tech business of the web, but you know, a broader audience. Also, whether the conclusion puts the results or the results into perspective in a kind of like a synthesizing way. And also like whether these chapters link to relevant standards, guidelines, and other resources. And some of the things I really liked and appreciated, for example, was chapters cross-referencing each other. So that was really cool to see. So like they were not just, you know, like isolated from each other. So that was pretty cool. More, you know, like we are techies, so like I also want to get my hands dirty. So like I check the SQL queries, clone the repo, how many like lines of code are there, how it change, and number of figures, like how it increase, number of words in the simplest ways. And I also like dive into the SQL queries, like how they were meaningful updates or not. And of course, this was a very difficult task in terms of, look, so all the chapters are amazing, right? I mean, these are just like a humongous amount of work the authors and reviewers, editors, analyzers put into. So like all the chapters are winners. So that doesn't mean we don't, you know, appreciate the other chapters, authors at all. I wish like we could give an award to all the chapters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like I have just a few recommendations for the next years. Of course, this was the first time an award is being given to the a chapter. So it was a bit like a beta testing, alpha testing, right? So of course we want multiple members coming together with diverse backgrounds to give this award. There could be some like a processes or criteria that's put together before the process started. And of course, yeah. So that's so this is the weird that there's just one person picking it after, of course, the recommendations from the chairs. Now the drum roll.
I wish I'd done a little audio for this.
Yes. Okay. So the winning chapter for the 24 Web Almanac is sustainability. Written by Logan, Burak, Ines, Alexander, Mike, Tim, reviewed by Rafael, analyzed by Lucia, Burak, and Mike. Here is a certificate that the team members will receive from the chairs. Thanks, Nurullah and Caleb for preparing this. So why this chapter? If you allow me, Henry, a few minutes. Okay. So this chapter really puts the web's environmental impact into perspective in a really informative way. It's a very long chapter. I'll mention that. but it really feels like you're reading a book on the subject. So I recommend people definitely read this chapter, but maybe in a few different sessions. They walk the reader through really some unexpected environmental effects of the web and the surrounding infrastructure, like data centers. Like, okay, we talk about like carbon emissions. Do we also think about the like water usage in really, especially like where environmental like footprint is sort of like a important or more fragile. The chapter does not require a lot of technical expertise and really written in an educative tone. So you really go into it and you learn so much. Also, the chapter makes this limitation and assumptions very clear. Some of these calculations are based on models that are updated not every year, but maybe since the last revision, actually. I think like Lauren also mentioned that. So I really like that this, like setting limitations into very explicit. So some facts about this chapter. It contains only more than 15,000 words.
Wow.
Very long. It's almost like a 50% longer than the next two, security and SEO chapters, also over 10K. Of course, like we are not advising or incentivizing authors to write longer edit text, but this was really, meaningful. So the length basically corresponded to the contributions. I really like that there was a meta-analysis of the carbon emissions or the energy usage of the Web Almanac itself. Every month, HTTP archive crawls 16, 17 million pages. Of course, this has a footprint. I definitely agree that doing this in one place and sharing it publicly makes it much better than doing this, concurrently in 500 different places and keeping it close. So I think there is still so much value in the HTTP archive project, but it has a emission impact. Ari, do you wanna guess? So the authors calculated like the energy consumption from running this 17 million page crawl every month correspond to a car, old car, not electric car, going around the world. How many times?
I'm not sure.
3 times. So the emission basically correspond to a car going around the world 3 times. Not nothing, but again, I think it's still meaningful. 4 of the authors of this chapter serve as the chair and the editors of the W3C's Web Sustainability Guidelines. Basically, we have the world-leading experts writing this chapter for us. How amazing!
That's amazing.
Yeah. And the last geeky, note. So this chapter has 5 of the 10 longest SQL queries used in this year's almanac.
Wow.
Yeah. So not the longest, but like they were when you sorted like top 10. So 5 of them came from the sustainable chapter. With that, I really thank the authors again, but all the other authors. It was really amazing for me to go through this, and I really appreciate everyone's contributions.
Amazing. Congratulations, sustainability team. That's awesome. Listen, I remember reading it, and I did remember thinking like, this is very long, because I was actually reading it. I'd stop to take notes, go back. And by the way, folks, I actually read my chapters using VoiceOver quite often because I just don't want to sit there and read it like line for line, and I was just thinking like, this is not stopping, like what is going on? It just kept reading and reading. And I realized how long it was. So, but it was fantastic work. So thank you very much again, team, all those involved with the sustainability chapter. Congratulations. You basically have, a target on your back now. Everyone's going to be like, well, I got to do better than sustainability next year, we'll see. But Gunesh, thank you very much for that. I do love some of the insights you shared, because some of them I just never thought of, in terms of like what kind of information makes like a really, really good chapter. And one that did stand out in my head was the fact that, they're referencing each other throughout, or the idea of referencing other chapters that may have data that applies to you as well. That is actually something that, I encouraged in this session, which is why I didn't want sort of like speakers to just have individual presentations. Like, let's all talk together about, our chapters, because there's probably some connecting dots, that we're not, considering. And it would just be better for everyone to sort of understand that as well. So, but yeah, man, well, thank you very much for your work there, and your decision on giving sustainability chapter the reward. And again, thank you very much for your time, because like you said, it is probably about 9 o'clock your time, and I appreciate that, because it is late in Europe.
Yeah, all good. That's
Perfect,
yeah.
perfect. That being said, folks, I'm going to wrap this up in the next minute or two. I do want to share a couple details, and hold up, I'm going to remove this deck, and Gunesh, I'm actually going to remove you as well. Thank you very much again for joining us. Yes. First thing I'm going to do is remind everyone to go out and read the Almanac. And you can do that by hitting that little QR code right there. Obviously, it'll be on your phone. Well, actually, it's kind of cool to read on your phone. You could just turn VoiceOver and put it down and listen to the chapters. But yes, definitely go read the Almanac. 16 of the 21 chapters are ready to be consumed right now. We spoke to authors and contributors from 5 of those chapters. I want to thank all of them again for spending a couple hours actually at this point with us. The one last thing that I do want to mention before I take off is I'm going to go back to the Almanac actually. Where is it? Where are you? Where are you? Oh, there you are. So I'm actually going to share my screen for the last time here. And there's something that whether or not you knew, I do want to share. So where are you? Almanac, and there you go. Okay, so you can see the Almanac. As I mentioned earlier, I think the Almanac is for more people than you realize. Obviously, if you're just curious about the web, Almanac is definitely for you. And I'm going to mention one thing actually, because yesterday was the, I think, 33rd anniversary of this thing called, well, it's known as the Gore Bill, but I believe it's called the High Performance. No, what is it called again? Let me go back and double check. I'll tell you right now, because I posted about it yesterday. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? There you go. Now, yesterday was the anniversary of something that is called the High Performance Computing Act. It was signed in 1991 by Al Gore. Why is this important? Because it's actually what funded a lot of things like the, what is it called again? The NCSA at the University of Illinois, which is where Mosaic was actually built, the browser, which is where Mark Andreessen got his start, helping build that browser. And, he went on to other things. But if you really kind of do the math, that led to a lot of things on the web. And we're probably here because of this Gore Bill, as they call it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But that being said, if you're just curious about the web, the details and the technical details about the Web Almanac is certainly there for you. Obviously, if you're a developer, I think it's absolutely important for you to read. You're a designer, there's interest in there for you as well. And obviously, anyone who's in sort of like that CMO space or that CTO space will certainly benefit from reading this. Now, something that I do want to show you that I don't think a lot of people know. Obviously, the chapters are there, and let's go to say, I don't know, accessibility. No, let's go to performance. And as you go through the chapters, you'll see there's always sort of like a graphic indicating, some of the data that's being shared. Did you know that you could actually, you'll see 3 little dots next to the graphic, and you could actually do one of 3 things. You could look at the data like in a chart, which I'll show you. And you'll see right here, all the information is actually in a, yeah, you could actually look at, look through all the information right there. So the information as it was pulled by the team, and obviously the graphics that are there right there. But these are all Google Slides. This is all open source, folks. You have access to this information. This is something that people, I don't think, realize, or maybe they do, but I don't. I definitely wanted to bring that up in case you're super duper curious. Now let's go back. You could actually then also go look at the actual query. We talked about some of the queries in the sustainability chapter, that 5 of the 10 largest ones. Well, you could look at the query that was used for this data right here. So that brings you over to the repo, and it's all there. So you can literally, now I won't advise you to, but I'll tell you why in a second, but you could literally cut and paste this and pull out the same information if you go over to BigQuery. Now, that being said, I would not recommend that right away, simply because this is going to burn through a lot of data, many terabytes of data, and that might make your wallet blow up like George Costanza. But what you can do, if you have query skills, you could edit this query to suit your own needs. So you could figure out, some details that you want to find out. You could literally remix this query yourself. So once again, you can actually go to these images and quite often enough get the query, get the data as it's been pulled, or just say you want to do a presentation internally at work, or you're going to a conference and you want to talk about some of the information that came from the Web Almanac. You can actually have access to the image itself and cut and paste that into your deck. All right. So, the Web Almanac, not only does it deliver a lot of the data that you might be interested in, but you actually have access to the queries, to the actual delivered data, and actually to graphics that have been created. And, using that data, you could probably create your own graphics. I don't know, you may want to send the data over to a designer and they'll be able to create you something really fresh. I just really want to share that because I don't think this is something that is well known. That being said, we're going to close it out. So let me just go back here. Sorry. I do want to thank everyone for spending their morning, lunch hour, or evening with us. It was very important that we sort of have this stream, important to us anyhow. I've always felt that the Almanac was a fantastic, it's fantastic documentation, but it'd be great to meet some of the people behind some of this info, and we got to meet some of them today. So that being said, I want to thank again all, 245 of you for joining us today. We thank you for your time. As I said earlier in the stream, I'm going to have a part 2 to this. We're going to bring some other authors with some of the chapters that were completed and have this conversation all over again. And again, do not be afraid to ask questions. I don't know, on LinkedIn. I think this was streaming and whatnot, but we'll have the information. But we'd love to ask us some of these questions that you submit to us ahead of time. So maybe I'll create a Slido or something of the sort. I think that's it. So my name is Henri. You can find me on all socials at Henri Helvetica. Let me just get rid of this screen right now. Yeah, you can find me on all socials. If you have any questions for the next stream that's going to be in January, let me know ahead of time. I'll announce some of the chapters that are going to be present and some of the authors that are going to be joining us as well. And beyond that, I think that's it. Yeah. All right, folks, thank you very much and have yourself a blessed rest of day or a good night. I see you, Barack, so we'll chat up a little later. All right, good night, folks. Good day. Cheers, and thanks again.